Now, Donald Trump has returned to Texas as he continues his bid for presidency in 2024. Now, yesterday, he gave a speech to supporters in Houston, where he currently holds a strong polling lead ahead of the Republican Party presidential primaries.
If Biden gets his way, the United States will be reduced to an impoverished third world, crippled blackouts. We're going to have crippling blackouts. We're going to have people literally begging our enemies for mercy. We're losing all of our power with what they're doing. It's crazy.
Trump's speech comes as his son, Donald Trump Jr., testified about the family company's financial settlements in a fraud trial in New York. Well, joining us now from Nevada in the United States is Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian. Amy, thanks very much indeed for joining us. What kind of reception did Trump get in Texas?
Well, according to him, he had a very huge crowd, just like all of his crowds are supposedly. So it's very hard to tell. And unlike in the past, where the majority of the networks would cover his speeches, this was only covered by a very small network, and you could watch it on YouTube. So I think that even though he's so far ahead in the polls, as far as the primary goes for the Republican side, the majority of the nation is pretty exhausted and hearing him repeat the same rhetoric over and over and over.
I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, he has gone back to type, hasn't he? He's retorting that none of this would have happened. Everything would be fine had he still been president instead of President Biden. He talked about his standing on the world stage, friends with Merkel, with Putin, for example. Just in terms of Trump, and it strikes me that when you look at Trump and indeed Biden, they're not exactly in the first flush of youth. So Donald Trump, what is he? Something like 77, 78. You've got Biden at 80. If Biden gets in, he'll be 82 at that point. Is that really the best that America can offer?
No, it's not. And I think that it's a shame because we do have a lot of other great opportunities out there. On the Republican side, I think Nikki Haley would be a wonderful option. You then have, individuals like Governor Ron DeSantis, who for some reason hasn't been able to break out of his mold, as most were anticipating that he would actually be able to supersede Donald Trump, and he hasn't been able to even come close, unfortunately. I think what Donald Trump has done, and he's done very well, is he has portrayed himself as the victim, not just with himself and with his family, but he's very good at stirring the pot and basically pulling on emotions of the MAGA base and bringing them into the fold and convincing them that they too are the victims and that they could be next if he as the savior of the nation, as he likes to think, is not reelected.
Amy, you mentioned there Nikki Haley emerging as Donald Trump's most likely challenger, and he appears to be noticing, doesn't he, turning his fire on her?
Yes, and it's disgusting. We all know he likes to do the childish name calling, and now he's labeled her as a bird brain. And one of the campaign's staffers, and they didn't deny it still to this day, at one of the events that they held at her hotel room, they actually put a bird cage in front of her door. It's just disgusting, it's childish, and it's immature. And it's unfortunate because you have somebody who actually was a former UN ambassador who served exceptionally well under Trump, mind you. And then she was also a governor. And so you have somebody with strength that's very well-rounded on the international stage and domestically. And so, to call her a bird brain is very misogynistic, and it's immature.
And Donald Trump has a very loose relationship with the truth, I think it's fair to say. He makes things up, he's all bluster. And in fact, Ron DeSantis has actually published something called a Trump accident tracker on X, looking at actually the president's mistakes. For example, he said that Biden could start World War II. He went on to confuse various cities in the United States. He also tripped over his teleprompter. Do you think Donald Trump is actually in a fit state to win the nomination?
Unfortunately, he has his followers brainwashed, and that's just the only way to describe it, because I've actually witnessed people who I thought at one time were incredibly intelligent individuals, people who you would once look up to, and they have basically drank the Kool-Aid and believe that he can do no wrong and that he's under incredibly, political scrutiny that no one's ever seen before, and they believe he's being mistreated at every turn, even though all of these indictments, one after the next, is being found that he actually has some guilt. And so I think even with today's civil case in New York, where his sons had to take to the stand, they were actually found in several lies, where Eric Trump basically said, he was only in charge of pouring the concrete and wasn't aware of any of the financial doings involving his dad's fudging of the numbers to make his dad look like he was worth more than what he actually is. And then Don Jr. actually blames the accountant. So there's no personal responsibility. And when President Trump goes and touts about, how important loyalty is, he's the most disloyal individual that will actually throw you under the bus quicker than you can blink if you do not stay the course and either become a fake elector and claim the election was stolen, or if you're like one of his sons and tries to cover up the fact that yes, indeed, they did fudge the numbers.
Yeah, you mentioned that court case taking place there in New York. We've heard from Donald Trump Jr., we've heard from Eric Trump. Ivanka Trump due to be giving evidence next week, although she's appealing against that. When are we going to be hearing from Donald Trump himself again?
I believe we're supposed to be hearing from him next week at some time, and I don't know exactly which day that is, but from what I understand, it's next week. And he's thriving on this. His lawyers are trying to make sure that this court case is drawn out as long as possible, because with every indictment, with every appearance, with every time that this is mentioned, that the court case is mentioned, he's able to fundraise. He's able to pull on heartstrings. And you'll have people who are probably living paycheck to paycheck that have just fed into his rhetoric and would rather give them their last, change out of their couch cushion when they should be saving it for themselves to put food on the table. But he's made himself to be a desperate martyr, and people are feeding into it. And it's very sad to witness.